let's talk about some fresh ideas of how to heal ourselves. Now, I've been on a healing path, let's say, a transformational path for about 20 years. I'm currently a celibate monk who now lives in Naples, Florida. And if you've watched some of my videos, you've heard a lot of this before. Let me share some fresh perspectives on how to emotionally heal ourselves and live a good life from the inside out. Okay? Now, I haven't heard anybody talk about it like this before, so let's see if it's fresh for you as it is for me saying it. So let's get started. First thing is, if you want to heal, if you want to feel better, if you just want to have a better experience of your life and feel peaceful and joyful and happy, and maybe don't wake up happy every day. I actually strive for that, but that doesn't happen to me. But I've co-created and learned a way and tools and a way of being that gives me access to those qualities anytime I want, literally. Okay, so here's some of the things that I do and that I've found work with over 10,000 people probably over the last 20 years. So here's the first thing. You've got to want it. You've got to want to feel better. You've got to, and maybe that sounds, trite, and of course I want it, right? But stick with it. Want it and stick with it. And that's the first thing. Well, there's a lot more to come, but want it. You know, desire is like a rudder in a ship. Now, I'm not a sailor, and I've spent a little bit of time on a sailboat, a little bit on the ocean, mostly on a river. Probably, 5,000 hours on a river, let's say, probably over the course of my outdoor career. And when you're on a boat on an ocean, my understanding is, if you don't have a rudder and you're being blown by the wind, you're just being blown by, in this metaphor, circumstance, right? Things that happen to you. And desire is a rudder. It points us in the direction that we want to go. And like I assume, sailors use the rudder and the wind to navigate where they want to go. I learned how to tack when I was like 12 years old on a little lake in northern Wisconsin, and I ended up just on the other side of the shore, which was pretty metaphorical actually for me, that I was just blown this way and that, right? In 1998, northern Wisconsin, right? So I did not have that ability. But metaphorically speaking, emotionally, our desire, what we want, points us in the direction of the achievement of our goals. So you have to want to feel good and consistently, right? Now, here's the thing. You've got to take action that moves you in that direction. And we'll talk more about that shortly. But step one, just want it and create a desire, okay? Number two, see what comes to you and turn your sailboat on the ocean into a vessel on a river. Here's what I mean by that. If you get your desire pointed in the right direction, meaning you become clear about how you want to feel, how you want to be, and thus the results that you'll get in your life. Because how we feel is a direct proportion to the results that we get. Meaning if we feel and we feel terrible most of the time, we're probably going to get those results in our life. Now, a lot of people think, and this is, I think, a not true assumption, is that the world happens to us. It's not my experience in my life. My experience is that however I transform my inner emotional state, thus the results will occur in my life. One of my dear teachers, who I learned from years ago, said, if you show me your results, I will show you how you think. Beautiful concept. It really empowers us to create our own inner world that will then be reflected by our outer world. Okay, so what do I mean by turning an ocean into a river? If we have our desire consistently lined up enough, meaning we want it enough, and we follow that up with action, what will happen to us is that circumstances will come to us that are a reflection of our internal state. And if we start to feel the vibe enough and we stay consistent with our desire, the ocean will turn into a river, meaning circumstances will start to feed into how we want to feel. Now, they may challenge certain beliefs that we have, like we might attract a frustrating situation or a frustrating person. But as I've said in other videos, triggers or emotional triggers are an opportunity because they show us weaknesses in our personality and how we can transform ourselves. So If we use those circumstances of ways to hone and evolve, take ownership, and create our inner world, meaning see examples that happen to us as opportunities to transform, to heal, to become more aware of our own patterns and habits, and what will happen is that we'll feel like a river, like life will be moving us along in a beautiful way. Now, it might not feel beautiful in the beginning because we'll probably be shown a lot of the habits or awarenesses or patterns that we have that have gotten us kind of into this position in our lives. And by the way, that happened to me. Like, I was in not a good way some time ago. And it's a very long, ultimately wonderful story about how I've reached this point in my life that I am today and how I'm daily happy, fulfilled, and joyful. But if I would have heard me saying this, 15 years ago, I'd have been like, that's not true. And it's not my experience, by the way. And so here's me telling former me and maybe reminding you that this is possible. All right, so number 1, want it. Want to feel better. Number 2, see what comes to you and turn over time your ocean into a river, such that instead of you having to hold on to the rudder and do all this tacking and moving the ropes metaphorically, you're on a river and you're just being moved by life. And the things that you see and experience, whether the rapids or the flat water or the wind in your face, if you've been on a river, you know what I mean. Wind is kind of brutal on a river when it's blowing against you. You use that as an opportunity to transform and evolve. All right. Number 3, if things don't change the way that you want, look inside of yourself for how you might be stopping the river from moving you, how you might be paddling or rowing upstream and fighting the flow of the current. There's really an art of acceptance in the work of transformation. And what that means essentially is accepting how we are in any moment, the emotional experience. And paradoxically, when we accept it fully into our hearts and soften and open into that experience, whether it's rage or anger or sadness or depression, there's always an opening. Now, sometimes we resist accepting it because we might be afraid of what's going to happen if we feel consumed by that emotion. But as we keep engaging in that process of healing and welcoming and accepting, then eventually what will happen is we'll transform. And if things will start to change and transform in our lives, and we'll start to get the things that we want, right? So that's number 3. Number 4, return to the wanting. Create new desires, followed by new actions. And keep it fresh, stay engaged, bring in new ideas and new people, new teachers, new mentors, new coaches, new information, read books, watch videos, stay engaged with things. I know for me, when I took breaks from like personal development, listening to things, or didn't go to workshops, I became kind of stagnant and I didn't really feel as fulfilled. So I'm always learning and growing for myself and having new conversations, contemplating for myself, what's the next step of my own evolution? What are the results that I want to get out there in my life that's new, that's going to feel kind of challenging and fulfilling? And I got to tell you, do that even though you don't feel like you want to. I think it's a myth in the world that successful people kind of create, that you have to feel motivated to do things. I mean, it's pretty common for me to not want to record a video, and then I do, and something awesome happens inside of myself, and it starts to create a momentum, right? So all of this said, number 4, return to wanting, return to desire. Create that rudder that eventually turns into the river. So number 1, want the healing for yourself. Just want it. Create the desire. Even if you don't feel like it, just want it. It's easy to want things, I think, right? So allow the wanting to get a little bit of traction inside of you, followed up with action. Number 2, see what comes to you and turn the ocean into the river. Allow yourself to be moved as opposed to struggling, figuring things out, working so hard. I know there's some fine distinctions here. And number 3, if things don't change the way that you want, look inside for how we might be stopping the good to come, how we might be not using the circumstances to transform. And number 4, return to our desire. You've got this. I'm with you, and all my best.